Hi, this is Scott Garibay, and today we're going to be talking about just some do's and don'ts, specifically do's and don'ts for running a panel at a convention. Okay? Now, the vast majority of conventions I go to are geek nerd culture in one way or another, and this is something that I've learned, and what I'm about to say are things that I've observed from going to multiple nerd geek oriented conventions, and just things that I've really become allergic to when I see them at panels, right? So I'm going to do some do's and don'ts. Let's jump into it. All right. So if you are a panelist at a convention, first one, please, for the love of goodness, learn small talk or keep your mouth shut. One or the other. I'm talking about, this happens at every convention. Panels end and panels start, okay? And there's usually 5 minutes of content at the beginning where people are coming into the room, okay? So there's 5 to 10 minutes of the panelists are there and they're sitting there and they cannot start the panel. And if they start the panel, people who are coming to the panel are going to miss some of the content. But if they, and so they really can't talk about what they've prepared to talk about. And I have seen some of the absolute worst, abuses in this small time, right? So a lot of times on mics, the panelists will just talk amongst themselves as friends, right? But there's an audience in front of you, right? So a lot of times things that are said are not appropriate, or things that are said are completely out of context, right? The other, and one of the things that it really can do is it can just really set a bad impression of you as a panelist before the panel has even started, right? The other thing is it's okay to remain silent and just look up every minute or two and say, hey, everybody, thanks for your patience. We're going to get started in a minute or two. Or if you really, really want, if you can't keep your mouth shut, which is a lot of people who do panels, right? People just jabber, and I get that, right? Like I talk a lot too. I'm guilty of this sin, right? But I feel like I'm aware of it. I feel like I have some awareness of when I should not be talking constantly, right? So basically, if you must talk, right? Mike Myers at SNL did this great skit a long time ago, and essentially he needed to take a break from hosting his show, and he would say something like, "The Italian Renaissance. It was neither Italian or it was neither Italian or a Renaissance. Discuss." Right, and it was completely off topic from what he was talking about. So if you have to talk, right, if your panel is on Naruto, right, talk about Star Wars for 5 minutes. Like, what's your favorite lightsaber, right? And just talk about that one thing, right? Keep everybody focused and just talk, and then people will come in and why are they talking about lightsabers? And that's okay, because everybody has an opinion. You're not, saying some weird personal thing that 50 people shouldn't know. It's really a big deal, and it's very clear to me that many panelists just don't know what to do in that startup time, in that weird time. All right, 2, okay? And this is another beginning your panel, right? So 1, if you have been chosen as a panelist by whatever body of selectors runs your convention, take this seriously and do not denigrate yourself before the panel. Self-denigrating humor is definitely a tradition, and many panelists love it, right? And so at the beginning, recently I went to a convention, I saw this person couldn't use the microphone. Oh, I'm not good at technology. I don't know how to use equipment well. I've heard, these are all literally lines I've heard in beforehand. Oh, I can't math today. I can't word today. Oh, I'm just terrible at everything, right? Here's the thing, right? If you want to denigrate yourself and you want to have a self-deprecating humor, right? I get it. The beginning of a panel is not the time to do it, right? You are in front of 50, 100, maybe 500 people, right? Not everyone. Some people are patient and they're sitting there, but there is no less than 10 to 25% of those people who whenever you sit down, they're like, Why am I sitting in this viewer's seat, and why are you there? And the second you say, I suck in 55 different ways, it intensifies that feeling, right? If you have been given the privilege of being a panelist, own it. Do not take that time to tell everyone there that you suck and they really shouldn't be listening to you, right? It is a really bad idea, and the reason why I'm talking about it is incredibly common, right? I see people do it all the time, and it's so frustrating because you're like, you're telling your person with just sitting in that seat, you're saying, I'm going to sit here and shut up and listen and maybe even take notes while you talk for an hour. Do not equip those people with reasons why they shouldn't do that, literally at the beginning of your panel, and I cannot express how often this happens. It is the worst, right? So if you're a panelist, do not do this, all right? Second, when it comes to your content, what do you do? What do you not do, okay? Whatever content that you're covering, right, there are layers that you should consider, right? So one, if you're going, I'll give you an example. Let's say that you're going to do a panel on all of the jutsus in Naruto, right? Like all of the hand symbols in Naruto, okay? Now, one, as a panelist, I see this all the time. Panelists will just make a list, and they'll say, here's the list, and they'll read it like a Wikipedia page, right? Now, that takes a lot of time and effort, and sometimes they'll actually have really good images, or they'll have videos, and that takes a ton of time and effort, right? But it's not enough, right? So if you're going to do a list, one, go ahead, do your list, right? There's nothing wrong with that, okay? But it can't be everything, right? I see a lot of panelists who will make a list of things, read the list like a Wikipedia page, and think they're done. You're not, right? So one, with each item, bring a little something personal. Bring something unusual that's connected to you, right? Anybody can read Wikipedia. They don't need you to do it, right? And so you have to bring something personal. You have to make some commentary on each item. And that means, yes, that means you're going to make your list shorter, right? So one, the list isn't enough. Two, when you are covering a content, right, you're going to do lists, right? You're going to do examples of this, history of this, all of that, right? I get that, right? But here's the issue. What about analysis? What does this mean for our politics, our culture, and our society? And if you're like, oh, I don't know what hand symbols from Naruto's jutsu mean for our politics, cultures, and society, don't take the job. Don't be a panelist, right? If you can't think about your content from the perspective of politics, culture, and society, if you can't analyze the list that you created, you don't belong in that seat, right? Like, it's very, very clear, right? And so, and just to be clear, many conventions really struggle with this. It is very hard to get good presenters, all right? Because a lot of times people just don't take the job seriously, right? So one, you want to have content, you want to have a list, you want to have history, but you really need to be bringing some analysis. Two, with your content, if you've been given an hour, right, you should fill 2/3 to 3/4 of that time with yourself, and then you need to shut up, right, and ask the people in the audience to talk. It is really, really important, right? Like, to ask questions and even commentary. A ton of people want to comment, right? And so the reality is, if you've been given the honor as a panelist to present, return that honor to your audience with a portion of your time and say, what are your questions? What do you think? What's some of your ideas? What's some of your analysis? What are some things that I didn't have on the list? What are pieces of history that you know that I don't, right? And the reality is, many audiences will have people who frankly know the content a lot better than you do. And just as a panelist, being knowledgeable of this and giving an opportunity for panelists to make your panel better is smart. And I see so many panelists that run over, that aren't aware of time, don't have time for questions, aren't respectful, and don't think about it, and don't want questions. They just want to jabber the entire time. This is really, really important. So be very careful, be very aware, and make sure you are making content that is actually specific to that. Here's another one, all right? is your content new, right? So one of the things that, like, so I'm a huge mecha fan. I have heard no less than 20 panels on the subject of mecha, right? And one of the things that's constantly talked about is the hero's journey, Joseph Campbell's hero's journey, Hero with 1,000 Faces, right? If you present this today as if this is new content or you're one of the first people talking about this, you sound foolish, right? It's totally okay to talk about that, but you can say, hey, here's Joseph Campbell, the hero's journey is really important, the Hero with 1,000 Faces is really important, right? Say it quickly, get it out there, right? In case there's anybody new in the group who, you know, like has been in a cave or something and just really hasn't seen this before. But the other thing, though, is you then have to say, okay, here's maybe where some of this material diverges from Campbell, right? And so one of the things is you really want to think, you know, you want to take your content and you want to smell it. Is this fresh? Is this new? Right? If it's not, go find some new stuff, right? Like, and that's one of the issues is, you know, a lot of times you can be bringing good content, but it's old and people have already heard it from other presenters at different times, right? So that is just, excuse me, a list of very, very, very common mistakes that I see presenters make, and it's a really big deal. So like, yeah, so really consider carefully, and you should be very much aware of that situation. That is all my opinion. I'd love to hear your opinion on the topic. Please consider liking and subscribing, and have a wonderful millennium.